the shooting range. In this episode, pages of history, a premium jack of all trades, tactics and strategy, dodging infrared air-to-air missiles, and metal beasts, an ambitious project's younger brother. Almost 7 years ago, the new ERA update brought main battle tanks to War Thunder. The main stars of fall 2017 were the Soviet T-64A and the duo of the KPZ and the MBT-70, created by a joint production of Germany and the United States. The latter never reached mass production due to its high cost, so the American engineers made a simpler, cheaper version of the tank. And that's how the MBT-70 got a younger brother that we're going to discuss today. Please welcome the XM803. On the outside, this machine is very similar to its relative, with the only notable difference being the MG that replaced the 20mm autocannon. The main caliber, however, remained the same. It's a 152mm cannon/launcher, and it's right where it should be. The main type of ammo here is a fin-stabilized, discarding Savage shell. Despite the impressive caliber, its penetration rate is comparatively modest, with less than 300mm even in perfect conditions. It's not high enough to simply shoot at the center of mass, but if you aim for vulnerabilities, even a frontal attack shouldn't be a problem. There's another type of ammo available that turns this cannon into a launcher, an anti-tank missile with a beautiful name of Shillelagh, that can pen up to 430mm of armor. It could have been a great auxiliary tool for quickly taking out open-top targets, but its reload is double that of other types of ammo, so we believe its best use is against helicopters. The turret rear of this tank houses an autoloader with 25 rounds. It provides a stable rate of fire with 8 shots per minute, independent of your crew's state. The XM803 got new armor that's even a little sturdier. Part of the turret front is a cast homogeneous piece that provides a tad more protection than the original project's spaced armor. It doesn't make the tank invulnerable, of course, but it's good enough to survive a stray round. The mobility of the machine suffered the biggest cut. Its rear houses an engine with 1,250 horsepower. Sounds good, but the original plan was to install a power plant with 1,500 horsepower. As a result, the younger sibling has an inferior acceleration rate, although it's still pretty mobile. And much like the real-life XM803 offers a lower price as its main advantage, its in-game counterpart enjoys a lower battle rating. It helps you avoid the most dangerous enemies and compensates for the newly introduced flaws. British aircraft engineers were rather upset and mildly infuriated. Not so long ago, they'd ranked among the best at their craft. They designed lots of different aircraft, maybe not the most popular ones, but at least among the best in their respective classes. And now the distinguished gentlemen were left in the dust. To make it even worse, it was in helicopter building. The Britons were challenged on two sides at once, by the US from the west and by the Soviet Union from the east. And Great Britain was losing fast in all classes of helicopters. The Vietnam War quickly spread the fame of the light cargo Hueys and the attack Cobras made by the Americans. But what did Britain have? The air shows demonstrated the newest Soviet Mi-8, and what could Britain offer? When their allies across the pond offered licensed production of the UH-1 Iroquois, the Westland Company took it as an insult in disguise. What they actually wanted was to build helicopters of their own design, better, faster, more agile, and cost-efficient than the competition. But how could a 19th century superpower compete with the superpowers of the new age? Well, first they cooperated with another superpower of the past, France. With shared responsibilities, they began working on an entirely new line of helicopters at once. The only project where Westland wanted less participation from the French was the most important one, the Future Lynx. The ambition of this enterprise was off the charts. The plan was to create a machine with a load capability of the Huey and the flight performance of the Cobra, while also being able to play the role of a carrier-based anti-ship and anti-sub helicopter. Do you remember the Wessex story? Back then, the Americans chuckled at the Brits' effort. But with the news of this new project, everyone rolled their eyes. Westland engineers were left alone. It's obvious what happens to plans that get too ambitious, right? So the French Gazelle and Puma eventually made their maiden flights and proved to be excellent. The Brits took part in the development but showed no interest in manufacturing them. The question hung in the air. How's their project doing? Was it moving at all? Well, when the assembly halls rolled out the first prototype in 1971, it felt like the mountain had brought forth a mouse. The helicopter Westland made was somewhat civilian? How is it better than the Huey? Well, as it turned out, it was much better. Can the Huey do a barrel roll like a plane? How about a loop? Fancy an Immelman? The Lynx could do all of that, even before mass production. Oh, you say the Mi-24 pushed 368 kilometers an hour and set a new record for classic helis? And you say its creators are proud? Well, it's time to take you down a peg, comrades. The Lynx can push 400, something deemed impossible before. Oh, by the way, it also delivered all the promised anti-tank capabilities, with payloads equaling the Cobra. Same goes for anti-ship and anti-sub performance, much like the British and French navies wanted. One thing though, was it all worth it? The Lynx would have never been able to match production numbers of the Iroquois or the Cobra, which also meant it would have never reached their levels of production and maintenance costs. Well, the Brits believed it was worth it. You want a cargo chopper with 2 tons of payload? Get a Huey. Want an anti-tank heli? Get a Cobra. Need an anti-ship helicopter? The Americans would be happy to sell you some Sea Sprites. But if you want all of those together in a single machine, you know who to ask. Yes, it's sophisticated and idealistic. Yeah, it's expensive. But, gentlemen, you do realize that perfection is an exclusive offer, right? If you believe you deserve it, welcome to the club. Guided air-to-air missiles have long been a familiar part of high-rank air combat. With each new model introduced, counteracting them becomes increasingly difficult. Today we'd like to talk about how you can avoid becoming prey to flaming arrows with infrared homing devices. The first such missiles, like the AIM-9B, the R-3S, or the Chaffrier, can be encountered even on early jets. These munitions aren't meant for high G-loads, so you don't need much skill to dodge them. A simple maneuver will do just fine. But missiles got better over the years, and the G-loads they can sustain have long surpassed the capabilities of airframes and humans. A dodging maneuver wasn't enough against newer models, so engineers invented flares. Flares are pyrotechnic devices fired by aircraft that burn in the air for a short while. Multiple heat sources can confuse and distract infrared homing devices. There are 2 types of flare blocks, built-in and suspended ones that you can put onto hardpoints. As a rule of thumb, a few launches are enough to break a target lock, so even a shallow pool of flares can be enough for an entire battle if you use them sparingly. However, it's much more effective to use flares preventively. If you fire them in advance, your enemy won't even be able to lock onto you. So it's always a good idea to add more countermeasures when you can. Some aircraft offer no way to add flares. In this case, you can use a small trick to improve your chances. Use rockets. They can become pretty good countermeasures. Guided missiles do react to them and change course. Another distracting factor is the sun. See an enemy trying to tail you and getting ready for a launch? Head straight for the strongest source of infrared light in the solar system. This would make the homing head dream of flying toward the stars, and it'll set off on its first and only space journey. Or, well, it'll try to. Sometimes, though, you can simply ignore an incoming attack. Engines on short-range missiles only work for so long, which means that if the launch happens more than a few kilometers away, and you're going supersonic, you might not even need countermeasures. Chances are the missile won't be able to catch up with you. The most dangerous infrared-guided air-to-air missiles have both excellent maneuverability and jamming resistance. Missiles like the AIM-9M, the AAM-3, or the Magic 2 can ignore flares and other sources of infrared light. The most reliable way to defend against them is to perform preventative mass launches of flares so that you avoid getting target locked in the first place. Still, you have some chances, even if the launch has already happened. Keep on mass launching your flares, but also turn off your afterburner and start maneuvering to leave the homing device's field of view. We'll talk about radar-guided missiles in another episode, but for now, we'll answer some of your questions from the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Sasen. Why is the toe on the Bradley so much weaker than on the M901? Hi, Sasen. It's because they use different missiles. The M901 is armed with a more modern version, the I-TOW, that offers a longer range and a higher pen. General B&B asks, how do I play the PBJ-1H in air and ground RB, and what payloads are the best? Hello, General. The PBJ-1H doesn't feel confident in air combat. Your best bet is either frontal attacks or powerful defensive weaponry. As for ground RB, the PBJ fares much better there. We believe the best bomb set is 3 1,000-pounders. Drop them as early as you can to lighten the aircraft, and use the cannon after that. Another question comes from Adam Neva. Will you add fuel tanks for the Su-27? Hey, Adam. The internal tanks of the Su-27 are big enough that it doesn't use drop tanks, even while transferring to new air bases. A player called Jay writes about the Su-25 SM3. We need game modes where you can use this from the beginning. Hi, Jay. Actually, you can use aircraft with any weaponry at the start of the battle if you play ground simulator mode. Of course, piloting is much harder there, but it's an exciting challenge. And the last comment for today was written by Arroyo. How do I use the GBU on the A4E? Hello. TV-guided bombs are pretty simple to use. Just lock onto a target or a spot on the ground before the drop. The only thing you need to keep in mind is altitude and speed. Unlike missiles, bombs have no engines, so the less it uses its control surfaces mid-flight, the higher its chances of hitting the target. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to cast guidance before making a roll, leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.